Okay. Yeah. I need to get around it. That charity stream sometime soon. TM. Alright. So. Hello everyone, I'm Stealth Intel. I also go by John. There's been some stuff going on in like leftist communities that I've noticed over a period of time now, and this isn't just recent events or things of that sort. This is things that have continued to happen while I've been in mostly leftist Discord communities. So that prompted me to be like, so there's this very strong appeal to be transparent with what's going on in the community. Like, what's going on, we should know about this, and we want to have as much, like, information that is possible. But this also comes at, the inverse of security culture, where due to some of the practices that we engage in, whether it be minimal organizing or engaging with our communities in advocating for certain things or not advocating for certain things, that we wouldn't want to compromise some of our own people through that. And a lot of people have different solutions to this. So I'm going to try and navigate my way through this inherent contradiction, or what I might see as a contradiction of full transparency and security culture. Because on one hand, you have like all the information is being presented, we have nothing to hide, here's what's going on. And then on the other side is we do have things to hide, because innately that would cause like the state or other communities to attack us directly for these things, or to compromise certain individuals who would need protection in that they have received harm and they don't want continued harm applied against them. And this can cover a wide range of topics. So one of the first things I found earlier in the week while I was doing some mild research on this, I didn't find a whole lot other than the two concepts of like just the general idea of transparency versus security culture. So I'm just talking in circles at this point. So I found this, and it's an anonymous author with Safe as Death. I've already read through this on my own time, but it's basically how transparency, when it's versus the state, only reinforces the state. You're not allowed, like, all of these extra security measures and having extra cameras. This is such an interesting topic. Thank you, Friso. I will be listening intently. So yeah, I'm probably going to end up reading through this entire thing, but I'm going to give a general summary of what I got from it beforehand, just so intensely. Hey, thanks for using the emojis that I finally got around to like putting in. I guess either work? Intently, intensely. Oh, I must have said it different. Yeah, they're kind of the same. It's slightly different. Yeah. So I'm going to be using the anarchist library for a lot of my research, and then probably branch out from there for what I'm going to be doing. But the safest death article that was submitted by an anonymous person. Yeah, why not both? Give, yeah, both. That was submitted by an anonymous person, which is just, yeah, keeping that safety culture in there. So, if I were to summarize this, is that advocating for the state or an authority to have extra security measures placed on you is actually more harmful than not having those security measures in place at all, because it's just putting more pressures on your life and actually just kind of not only advocating for the status quo, but for more authoritative regimes. So that's what I got from this. I'm going to read through it now and see where we can see what else we can glean from it, especially with a refresher. So this article is translated to English from its original Italian. So let's take a little bit of the words with a tiny bit grain of salt. This article appeared in Machete #1. They who can give up an essential liberty to obtain a little temporary safety deserve neither liberty nor safety. Benjamin Franklin. It's a problem that gets talked about a lot, but the diagnosis is terse. On the right and on the left, the verdict is the same. We live in an unsafe climate. Every day, the news showers us with gallons of blood gathered at the scenes of ambushes, rapes, and murders. Content warning, by the way. I'm sorry. This does get into forms of violence and state violence and yikesy stuff. Bloody events described and filmed with a maniacal wealth of details, making horrible shivers run up our spines that are already weakened by daily genuflections. Watching the misfortunes of others is no longer a consolation. We aren't able to heave a sigh of relief at having escaped it. It is a nightmare, because these misfortunes seem to press against the screens, so as to hurl themselves into our living room carpets. And if one day we become the protagonists of these new broadcasts that now drip only death. Prey to terror, and we begin to triple lock the door, not talking to the neighbor or going out at night anymore. Panic spreads as the following certainty is generalized. Lack of safety is the scourge of our times. If it is solved, the gates of paradise will open for us. To be blunt, there is some perplexity over the increase in violence. Facing explicit demands, the experts in heavy quotations, themselves are forced to recognize that there is no substantial difference in comparison to the past. Humble Bundle's new bundle that launched within the last hour or so is a book bundle called Cybersecurity 2019 by Packet. Wow. The timeliness of this. Where's my sponsorship, Humble Bundle? I could throw those books in and scan through some of them chapters. Please, I need to pay rent. Yes, I live with my parents. I still have to pay rent. I can paste in the link with my affiliate ID. The leap in statistics is the fruit of different bookkeeping criteria, but also of visibility. It works like this. The political class puts the question of safety at the center of its interventions. Journalists, accommodating to their masters as usual, repeat the concerns of politicians and enhance them, illustrating them with news items. There is no lack of news to report. If stories aren't regulated to the paragraph on the 15th page, they will expand out of proportion until they become exemplary. All that remains to politicians is to comment about them and the play is made. Do you see our concerns were more justified? They were indisputable. There truly is a safety problem. Ultimately, all this ado would not have much importance if it didn't aim to spread terror among the people, pushing them to demand drastic measures from their representatives. Against whom? Why against those petty criminals who become giants of crime as soon as they end up under the spotlight? It goes without saying that the petty criminals are not exactly the top list of problems that disturbs our lives. Quite different problems place our survival in that of our times in danger. The planet is threatened by ecological imbalance. Cuts and restructuring loom over the workplaces. Our houses are at the mercy of theft by the banks. Our health is threatened by the poisons we eat and breathe. Our entire existence is threatened by the imminent danger, no to speak of current and future wars and our unforeseeable collateral effects, whose consequences are much worse than theft of a wallet on the bus. The inventory of possible misfortunes is so vast, our days pass so much under the sign of precariousness and misery. That is completely crazy to think that petty criminals are the cause of this social malaise. Is it repeated until we're dizzy that the aggression waits in ambush just around the corner? Simple, because the state can dress up as the great protector around which to rally and the righter of wrongs to whom to turn. Muggers, purse snatchers, drug dealers, rapists, or murderers, random or hardened, real or presumed, native or foreign, not being the ones responsible for environmental devastations, job losses, financial devastation, food adulteration, workplace accidents, bombings of civilians, famines that afflict the world, or any other great social problem. It is necessary to reveal those who most directly responsible for all these occurrences. The punishment of chicken thieves in public square serves the state and its hired killers by diverting the general attention from pirate foraging of the sharks. One worry drives out another. This is why illustrations spread a panic to be attributed to someone else, feeding it continuously and increasing it in every way. And so the reason why I chose this, especially when it comes to leftist Discord communities, is that if we regard the state, which this is making a huge, like, jump, but equate the state to, like, moderators and the person who owns the server, if they are pushing an agenda that it is the trolls that we must keep out, it is the chuds and the people who argue in bad faith, while there is valid claims to that, it's not acknowledging the wider problems of what causes those people to go into these things. We're not providing a solution to why these people come in and raid leftist spaces or come in and try to ruin safe places. We're not acknowledging the wider causes and incentives for them to do that and trying to eliminate those. And while, yes, getting rid of capitalism would de-incentivize that, there are other methods that I'd like to explore with that as well. But that's later. As a result, the hang-up about safety provides another advantage to the political class, justifying its recourse to increasingly tougher and more severe measures demanded by the population itself to obtain, first of all, the certainty of punishment. For whom? But that is another matter. Be that as it may, a population terrorized by the possibility of having their pocket picked applauds the increase in forces of order. A population intimidated by crimes committed by immigrants welcomes the CPTs, Centers of Temporary Resistance, with relief. A population frightened by the possibility of finding someone has broken into their house is favorable to the spreading network of surveillance, and so on. But the provisions enacted in the name of the struggle against a few petty criminals will come in handy, especially against many potential rebels. More than petty criminality, the real danger to repress is social conflict. The political exploration of feeling of being unsafe is formidable force for repressive laws. The climate of terror in which we live is not the natural outcome of hateful social conditions. It has been deliberately created to slip the satisfied city dweller into an unprecedented police regime. The state identifies the problem of public safety with microcriminality, with the aim of imposing its solution. Public safety, i.e., the cops. AGAB. All safety measures are authentic attacks on individual freedom, and couldn't be taken so lightly if there hadn't been a genuine thought police operation aimed at imposing that idea that safety is the guarantee of freedom rather than its preventative negation. So the disease and the cure have been created, reconciling safety and freedom in a firm ideological alliance. An absurd alliance impossible between two contradictory notions, which, like water and fire, cannot remain in contact without dissolving each other. The construction sites of safety are built on the tones of freedom. Safety has the objective of distancing all danger, while the practice of freedom, on the contrary, entails a challenge to every danger, It's no accident that the expression making safe usually means the act of putting something under lock and key. The typical example is that the wild animal snatched from the jungle to be locked in a cage. In this way, the zoo administrators assure us the animal is rescued from the dangers of the jungle and made safe. Behind bars, it will not incur the risk of being shot by hunters or torn apart by savage beasts. Well, this animal is certainly safe, but at a heavy price: its freedom. It is well known, when one avoids danger, one doesn't live life. One barely preserves it, because only by going to meet danger does one live life in its fullness. Thus, safety and freedom are utterly incompatible. So, this is not only touching on transparent, like, I know it will uh, get to transparency in the next few down here in this area, but it's also touching on freedom versus security, which was uh, something that I had forgotten about when I skimmed through this earlier this week. The more control there is, the safer we are, say the knuckle-headed people. Jeez, guy. And then add, video surveillance cameras are useful because nothing can happen under their eyes. Appalling expressions, symptoms of unconditional love for Big Brother. But who would want to live a life subject to control where nothing happens? Only at the cost of completely clouding the mind could one happily enter into the emotional desert through which our era trudges. Freedom is self-determination, a choice of any possibly, risk, a challenge to the unknown that cannot be pampered under a glass bell. But in our times, the first quality required of an honest person is precisely that he conduct his life in transparency. A transparent person has nothing to hide, nothing to silence in his public or private life, thus nothing to fear from others watching him. In the name of transparency, every intrusion is justified. Any will to keep a secret indicates guilt. It is curious how the private life of individuals, which was once surrounded by respect and discretion, is now watched with suspicion. Through logical and rhetorical acrobats, protecting one's secrets has been made into a shady behavior. Banishing private life, it is clear that what allows its unveiling, investigation, is consecrated as a primary value. When was this writing from? Retrieved October 29th, 2009 from this website. It's from Machete One. Let's see. Not the film. Would it be newspaper? It was just regarding the public opinion part about it being considered shady to hide your secrets. I feel like that's kind of waved a bit back and forth. Yeah. So the public opinion, that is. Yeah, and that goes with probably how much what this person is talking about when the media drums up. I butchered that spell. That's fine. So I don't necessarily think he's stating a specific time period as much as the effect of the media drumming up fear, and therefore when investigations happen, um, it is more acceptable to peer into every facet of a person's private life, um, without really acknowledging why the things happen, instead of uh, getting to the punitive statement of things, is what I think they're getting at. Because if that makes any sense, at least that's how I'm interpreting it. Yeah, sure. I just wanted to get a sense of what time period it was written in. Okay, I think this was written at least not too long ago. So it was retrieved from Machete Blogspot. So this is probably an early 2000s piece, if I had to guess, if it was retrieved from there. Which would make sense. Especially if it's 2009 and this is being written after 9/11. That could add context to this. I get where you're coming from with this now, Fresso. You're reading a book about discourse, rhetoric, word usage in the U.S., and it's a bit dated from 2005. Ah, that's fair. Nice. Would love to see this book that I'm reading updated for Obama and Trump administrations. That if I had to title that book, I would call it Wordplay and Doublethink Being Employed in Real Life. Get that really 1984 vibe. Let's see. I believe I left off. Ah, daggone it. It keeps. Political Keywords is the book. Ooh. Copy. Ooh. Yeah, that looks cool. You're reading it for your rhetorics class / corpse. Okay, so I'm going to continue here where I left off. And we're about to get into the transparency versus the state part of this. But in our times, the first quality required of an honest person is precisely that he conduct his life in transparency. A transparent person has nothing to hide, nothing to silence in his public or private life, thus nothing to fear from others watching him. In the name of transparency, every intrusion is justified. Any will to keep a secret indicates guilt. It is serious how the private life of individuals, which was once surrounded by respect and discretion, is now watched with suspicion. Through logical and rhetorical acrobats, protecting one's secrets has been made into... Wait, I've already read this. Haven't I? I may have not read this on this stream, but I've definitely read this whole thing before. So I'm just going to keep going. Made into shady behavior, banishing private life, it is clear that what allows its unveiling, investigation, is consecrated as primary value. If this is so, then the means employed for this purpose are not and cannot be questioned. It defenses of wiretapping. At first, this demand for transparency was developed to contain the abuses of those who hold power, requiring transparency in the lives of public men, of those who have high responsibilities, has more than understandable function. They have to answer for the way that they manage the public thing, i.e., put in a position where they can't abuse their privileges. But the reverse demand, that the common people should be transparent to the eyes of those who hold power, is more terrible than one can imagine. Under pretext of the exchange of information and the mutually in control, the foundations for totalitarianism are laid. So here it makes the distinction of, if you are a public figure and you hold power, this transparency is justifiable because your position of power. However, for the common person, this transparency is not justifiable because the common person doesn't have power. Already in itself, transparency at all costs has an unpleasant fallout. There are the areas in the human being that naturally escape with every indecent gaze. A person's intimacy with his sexual taste is one of these. There was a time when someone who was interested in the intimate life of others was accused of wallowing in rumor-mongering and looked upon with disapproval, renamed gossip. A rumor-mongering is now considered the spice that gives flavor to otherwise insipid conversations. I'm getting the impression this author does not like drama at all. The dreariness of a world that has transformed private vices into public virtues. But who stops to reflect on the cause of this effect might be? Our houses and homes have become caretakers' lodges. And in Italian, there is a saying, gossip like the caretaker. Okay. It's true, but is it a matter of contradiction to the shock treatment ordered against freedom of thought, to flush out this freedom that can always be protected by the secret? The whole pile gets set on fire. The demand for freedom is a eulogy that comes before the funeral of the corpse of freedom in every sphere of human life. And rather than rebel before the firing squad, We bow our heads. We live in a society where we are all on probation, and every day we diligently go back to the sign, the register of resignation. Because of the uneasiness we feel in the face of absolute freedom, without limits or boundaries. Because of deafening media overkill that causes us to see enemies everywhere, spurring us to opt for the lesser of evil of social control. We live in a society. It was only a matter of time. But also, our capricious, our capricci. What is this word? I've never seen this word before in my life. Capriciation. Okay, I am finding out what this word is. I don't know what this word is. Uncountable. The act of participating with other. Let's see how it's pronounced. Co-participation. Okay. So our co-participation. Participating together with others. Co-participation. Okay. Got it. And degradation. We feel somewhat relieved. Over the past few years, television has reassured us about the goodness of police, federal agents, and judges. Heroes of numberless TV shows. But how often has it invited us to directly spy through the keyhole? So-called reality shows have had the effect of making the idea of a transparent life that unfolds before all eyes and is periodically judged, punished, and rewarded, familiar and normative. The protest against the devastation of discretion runs into a barrier that has become classic. If you have nothing to hide, you have nothing to fear from control. Astounding, cop-like reasoning, which once again uses a logical reversal to make discretion a vice and meddling a virtue. More and more, daily life comes to resemble a prison, where they take fingerprints of everyone born, where you walk through numberless metal detectors, where you are observed by electronic eyes, where the presumption of innocence has been given away by the presumption of guilt. This person sure is a cop lover, huh? I would say this person, like, they don't like cops at all. They just really like bringing up the topic of cops. And yeah, if this was written, can't blame them. And if this was written in 2009, after 9/11, I get where they're coming from with this. I get where this is coming from. Especially with how bad the media was at the time with this and how escalated things got and still are. We're still feeling the effects of what the state did because of 9/11. Like, in my own opinion, 9/11 isn't a tragedy just because of the lives lost. That's part of it. But it's more of a tragedy because of what the state did to its own people. Because that's an important distinction. We lost more people in Hurricane Maria than in 9/11, but no one talks about that because it's not being used as a way for the state to escalate its own security measures for your freedom. We have all become suspects for what we might do if we used our freedom. The state goes all the way with this logic and asserts its right to punish this threat, even in its most innocuous manifestations, even preventively repressing it. Earlier, at least, it was maintained that the individual would become punishable by law when he put his transgressive intents into practice. Anyone could dream of killing. You just couldn't do it with impunity. Unless you were dressed in a uniform, of course. Western democratic civilizations loved to shove its superiority over other civilizations down our throats. These other civilizations were judged as obscurantist because they did not guarantee complete freedom of thought to those within them. Just lying propaganda, of course. But that at least had disguised itself to appear true. Today, repression has hid itself of the burden of any embarrassment. Comma, space, comma. And it is obvious to all that the mere dream of transgressing, the mere deviation of thought, is enough to attract the iron fist of the judicial system. An example? The bus that periodically snap the handcuffs onto someone who has downloaded images of child pornography from the internet. However, contemptible, criticizable, hateful such behavior may be, the fact remains that these people are incriminated not for having abused any minors, but for looking at photographs in the privacy of their own homes. How long before the public burning of the works Saudi? Okay, so this is kind of jumping the gun in two different ways, in my opinion. I get where this guy is coming from, and like, maybe these people need rehabilitative justice, and like, that would be the more progressive way of going about this. But jumping to burning the works of Saudi might be much of a jump. Another example on the horizon is what happened to some friends of those arrested last February 12th in relation to the investigation of the so-called New BR Red Brigades, stopped by a police patrol in the very serious act of putting up posters. They were taken in for arrest. Already the event is telling in itself, since almost a poster can express an idea. Furthermore, the idea expressed in these posters wasn't an indictment to armed struggle, but rather leveling of the war on terrorism. How long until the raids against militarists and pacifists? So yeah, I definitely think this was written just after 9/11. I bet we could look that up. The individual with their ideas, desires, and impulses constitutes a threat for social order, but also for themselves and others. From this is born the climate of civil war that is spreading nocturnal curfews, patrols by armed soldiers, roadblocks. It is as if a war has been declared on an imaginary enemy that isn't there, but might be us. On everyone and no one, if each individual is a potential criminal, and if every criminal is an enemy of the state, then a war against individuals is being carried out. Now, there is a substantial difference between the concept of the criminal and the concept of the enemy. The former is recognized as a part of the community. The latter is not. The enemy is not guaranteed extenuating circumstances. His punishments are not negotiated. No pretense is made of wanting to rehabilitate them. They are destroyed. Against them, everything is allowed. Wars are police operations, and police operations are war. Now, I'm trying to make an effort to replace some of the pronouns here with more neutral pronouns. It could be that in Italian, they don't have neutral pronouns like we do in English. Some languages just don't. Or their language could be like certain words have like gender connotations with them, like Spanish does. So, yeah. It also wasn't a thing most people were aware of 20 years ago. Yeah, that too. That's also something to bring up. No, I expect medieval gender-neutral literature. That's what I expect. There is only one way to avoid being considered an internal enemy to eliminate: respecting legality. But prayers to this modern idol don't protect you from dangers, except maybe that of divine wrath. If an atheist, however, a horrible doubt arises. Why should the law, such by synonyms with the good? Under Nazism, the persecutions of Jews was legal. The death penalty, torture by a means of extorting information, the manufacture of nuclear warheads. These are all legal in many states. The legality of an act merely denotes its conformity to what is prescribed by law, i.e., to the interest of the ruling class that is its author. It tells us nothing about the value, the meaning, the consequence of the act. The culture of legality thus leads to exclusively to ignoring through obedience, which ceased to be a virtue many years ago, even for priests, while continuing to be the sweet dream of tyrant, even the worst aspect, to catch a glimpse of the abysses towards which the exaltation of legality pushes. Is it enough to ask a simple question? Why don't we commit an act, like, for example, rape? Do we reject it because we consider it a repugnant act, which goes against our ideas and feelings, or because there is an article of legal code that prohibits and punishes it? Okay, I had, several weeks ago, or about a month ago, some time ago, on Twitter, I came across this exact idea that this person is talking about, without ever having read this. And that was the idea that, don't lose it, McCarthyism was considered wrong, not because of people should be allowed to be communist and be able to spread those ideas, but because he was incorrect and it was illegal. Right? So when this guy brings up, um, like, why, uh, why do we hate rape? Is it because it's illegal, or is it because it goes against our morals? I like that this guy brings this up. Do we reject it because we consider it a repugnant act, which goes against our ideas and feelings, or because there is an article in the legal code that prohibits and punishes it? In the first case, our motivation could be described as ethical. In the second, it is legal, maintaining that human beings should follow state legality rather than their own individual ethic means declaring that it is impossible for an individual to establish what is right or wrong for themselves. After the capitulation of free will in the face of the will of authority, the penal code becomes the conscience of a world that no longer has a conscience. A world in which the human being is thought of as lacking intelligence, with dulled feelings, and sensitive to suffering. A savage beast to cage, control, repress. It is the price to pay in order to keep ethics from rising up against legality. So, it's all about maintaining legality over ethics, basically. A society that sees its members as its enemies and entrusts authority with the task of repressing their thoughts and actions. A society quick to sacrifice every freedom in exchange for a crumb of safety. A society that sees good as obedience to law and bad as transgression of the law can only end up becoming totalitarian. How else can you describe a society placed under a regime of uh, probation by a state that is granted every weapon and every police method for dealing with every particle of a person's life? As Hannah Arendt maintained, even a democracy can be totalitarian. A totalitarian state is one that makes it a required civic duty not only to respect the law, but also think that those laws require you to think. Put simply, the insurgents who broke bank windows in Genova in 2001 were not only criminals, those who that's not physically, that's psychologically participated by not stopping or denouncing them are also criminals. The social order doesn't limit itself to repressing hostility against itself, but also indifference. Loving it is a duty, and whosoever doesn't carry it out is persecuted. Unfortunately, there is a blind spot in our minds that keeps us from comparing the totalitarianism of the modern world to the kind that is characterized in the first half of the last century, as if the heaviness of what happened in the past certifies the lightness of what is happening in the present. The barbed wire that surrounded Auschwitz was a different gauge than the wire that surrounds the present-day concentration camps from Guantanamo to the Centers of Temporary Residence, CTPs. But anyone who doesn't stop in the face of lack of gas chambers, who doesn't believe that ruthlessness of a regime is determined by the particularly gruesome aspect, can't avoid grasping the similarity that exists between the two eras. I like how this guy was ahead of the time pointing this out, even with not only Guantanamo Bay, but the further concentration camps that have been established today on the border in the US, and how people are examining that. It is enough to look around. It is enough to look around to notice the same banality of evil and identical alienation of the individual. The same loss of the I through a combination of ideology and terror. Today, a single model of life reigns from west to east, without being called into question from any side. That this omnipresence is becoming its concern. As long as capitalism has an enemy, it also had a scapegoat onto which to unload all responsibility, a thing that occurred reciprocally for the others. But now, who is there to blame for the world finds itself on the edge of an abyss? The world, at last, affordable to all. A vast supermarket vomiting out plastic-coated goods has not at all increased happiness, peace, or equality. The enemy has now become anyone who protests against the world, i.e., potentially everyone. The ideology of safety anticipates the times. It doesn't wait for the explosion of rage. It attributes the terror of current social relationships to the freedom of individuals, suddenly transforming everyone into the enemy, making us all suspicious in the eyes of the other, isolating us in our fear, provoking a war amongst the poor in order to diffuse a social war. And it takes the legislative and police measures necessary for repressing such a threat. In this sense, what some people call the safety drift can be thought of as a huge preventative counterinsurgency operation. So yeah, this might seem like a bit much to jump from this to jump to a discussion about Discord moderation, right? But I've seen this time and again happen, where yes, where like a whole bunch of chuds or whatever raided Discord and like shut it up and dump a whole bunch of homophobic and bad shit in the chat, and then that causes an increase in security. And it's never, and most of the time, it's not a temporary increase in security at the cost of people's freedom to use certain channels. Like, there was a time where the chuds were in armed force trying to get into leftist discords and find pictures of people to dox them. And then that time passed. You don't hear about it. They haven't done it in a while. But yet, for a lot of discords that I frequent, they have not re-employed those channels. And for the safety of for the sake of safety. um, and like, yeah, I'm relating this to Discord and everything, but that's mostly because I want to bring this out because Discord is my leftist community. I don't have a leftist community in my day-to-day life of where I live. So my leftist community is online. So looking at this information and understanding how it works is like yeah, FWIW. In some cases, it's a good idea to have those measures in place preemptively because damage can be so severe when it's breached. Yeah, and that's why I think vetting is important to a degree. But having countermeasures in place to the degree that disrupts the ability to adopt new people into the community is not good either. Yeah, exactly. So that's the thing is do the people who come in and spam stuff have power? And if they do, then they should be held accountable to that power. But also, are the moderators held accountable for their power? In a lot of spaces, that's not entirely clear. What the moderators say goes. I've never heard of a election for moderators in any Discord that I have frequented. It's all trusted individuals who were there already. But you know, it couldn't hurt to have a vote. I understand most Discords seem to be personal domains, so they're authoritarian in their offset. Yeah, and a lot of people have complained about this and that there's not a good alternative to this. I saw a couple attempts of this kind of like everyone just gets moderator privileges thing, but then e.g. for my personal Discord, it doesn't make sense for for people in there to be elected by other people in there if I don't personally trust them. Well, yeah. And like, because Discords are typically upheld by a personal identity, a personal public figure's brand, they're incentivized to do that as well. Because who you allow to moderate would also come in the question of you, right? Holding you accountable for the people that you've allowed to moderate in your chats. But for something like the friends we made Discord, we should absolutely at some point figure out some way to communally figure out how to handle things. I don't want that to be a personal space. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and since, yeah. And with the leftist content creators Discord, which I don't think is a secret, this is why I'm mainly doing this research right now, so I can bring this up into the wider it doesn't seem very secret. Yeah, it doesn't seem very secret, but it doesn't seem like a lot of people have talked about it. Plenty of people have mentioned it in public. Okay. Then I'm just out of the loop. But it's not brought up that much, no. Okay. So yeah, this is something that I want to bring up to them of like what I'm researching right now and like how that relates to things. It's like an offhand comment every now. Yeah, exactly. So what I want to look at next is security culture. Because, so Safest Death gives us the idea that people with power should be held accountable, but holding accountability to people without power is just kind of authoritarian. And that if temporary measures are put in place, they should be temporary. So, however, security culture takes this like a step further. So the central principle of all security culture, the point that cannot be emphasized enough, is that people should never be privy to any sensitive information they do not need to know. And like, I can't help but always have like a nagging feeling in the back of my head that this is the biggest part of security culture that I have, like, that inspired me to make like this research, is that there is information that will need to be withheld no matter what. Yeah, this is such an important thing. Like, don't ask, don't tell. You can say no at any time to anyone about anything. Don't ever turn your friends over to your enemies. Don't make it too easy for your enemies to figure out what you're up to. And like, all of this comes at the cost of some individual freedoms as well. It's much more of a core concept in a Unix system than it is in Windows. Windows is catching up, but it's not in your face as Unix. Okay. I know I'm shifting abstraction levels here, but it's the same principle, sorry. Oh, yeah. I get it. So, a security culture is a set of customs shared by a community whose members may have been targeted by the government, designing to minimize risk. Having a security culture in place saves everyone the trouble of having to work out safety measures over and over from scratch, and can help offset paranoia and panic in stressful situations. Hell, it might keep you out of prison too. The difference between protocol and culture is that culture becomes unconscious, instinctive, and thus effortless. Once the safest possible behavior has become habitable for everyone in circles in which you travel. You can spend less time and energy emphasizing the need for it or suffering the consequences of having it or worrying about how much danger you're in As you'll know, you're already doing everything you can to be careful. Okay. Oh, thank you for the follow, Edrilis Ed. Dang it, I wanted to get it right. I wanted to get it right. Adrilasil. Adrilasil. Yes. I know everyone calls you Ed, but I wanted to get it right, dang it. Fresso shifts abstraction levels a lot. That's a mood. Woo! Welcome, Ed. Yeah. Adrilasil. A security culture is a customs shared by the community whose members may be targeted by the government, designated to minimize risk. Having a security culture in place saves everyone the trouble of having to work out safety measures over and over from scratch and can help offset paranoia and panic in stressful situations. Hell, it might keep you out of prison too. Okay, so security culture is implemented when you know you're probably going to be targeted by the government. So for casual like communities and things of that sort, it might not be as necessary. So I'm going to try to keep that in mind going forward. The night has been sat. Sorry, Star Wars is just good lore, lol. I think that's now my head canon when discussing Star Wars as political theory. They are the left outside of the quadrants. Alright. Okay, the difference between protocol and culture is that culture becomes unconscious, instinctive, and thus effortless. Once the safest possible behavior has become habitable for everyone in the circles which you travel, you can spend less time and energy emphasizing the need for it, or suffering the consequences of not having it, or worrying about how much danger you're in. As you'll know, you're already doing everything you can to be careful. If you're in the habit of not giving away anything sensitive about yourself, you can collaborate with strangers without having to agonize about whether or not they're informers. If everyone knows what not to talk about over the telephone, your enemies can tap the line all they want, and it won't get them anywhere. Okay. The central principle of all security culture is the point that cannot be emphasized enough is that people should never be privy to any sensitive information that they do not need to know. And I think the part about security culture that I've been getting hung up on lately is sensitive information. Not just information, but the descriptor sensitive clears that up a bit. Like, we only information that is necessary to know. Hi, dude. There. Hello, welcome to the chat. The greater the number of people who know something can put individuals or projects at risk. Whether that something be the identity of a person who committed an illegal act, the location of a private meeting, or a plan for future activity. The more chance there is of the knowledge getting into the wrong hands. Sharing such information with people who do not need it does them a disservice as well as ones who puts at risk. It places them in the uncomfortable situation of being able to mess up other people's lives with a single misstep. If they are interrogated, for example, they will have something to hide rather than being able to honestly claim ignorance. Are you like Green Day's song? That's an extremely vague question. Compartmentalization. Clap, 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 clap. Don't ask, don't tell. Don't ask others to share confidential information you don't need to know. Don't brag about illegal things you or others have done, or mention things that are going to happen or might happen, or even refer to another person's interest in being involved in such activities. Stay aware wherever you speak. Don't let chance allusions drop out thoughtlessly. Okay, I'm going to grab that fresco and put that here so we can come back to that. Don't ever turn your friends over to your enemies. If captured, never ever give up information that could endanger anyone else. Some recommend an explicit oath be sworn by all participants in a direct action group. That way, in the worst case scenario, when pressure might make it hard to distinguish between giving up a few harmless details and totally selling out, everyone will know exactly what commitments they made to each other. Don't know if an oath would necessarily stop that. Don't make it too easy for your enemies to figure out what you're up to. Don't be too predictable in the methods you employ or the targets you choose, or the times and places you meet to discuss things. Don't be too visible in the public aspects of this struggle in the places. Wait, did I just go in a loop? Don't be too visible in the public aspects and the struggle in which you do not do your most serious direct action. Keep your name off mailing lists and out of the media. Perhaps avoid association with above-ground organizations and campaigns entirely. If you're involved in really serious clandestine activities with a few comrades, you may want to limit your interactions in public. If not, avoid each other altogether. Federal agents can easily get access to your phone numbers dialed from your phone and will use such lists to establish connections between individuals. The same goes for your email and the books you check out from libraries, and especially social networking sites like MySpace. I guess replace this with Facebook and Discord and Twitter. This article is showing its age. Facebook, Twitter, Discord, Twitch. Yeah. Don't leave a trail. Credit card use, gas card, cell phone calls, all leave a record of your motions, purchases, and contacts. Have a cover story supported by verifiable facts if you might need one. Be careful about what you keep in your trash. Could reveal about you. Dropouts aren't the only ones who go dumpstering. That's sad. It's sad but true. Keep track of every written document and incriminating photocopy. Keep them all in one place so you can't accidentally forget one. And destroy them as soon as you don't need them. The fewer there are in the first place, the better. Get used to using your memory. Make sure there aren't any ghosts of such writing left behind and impressions on the surfaces you were writing on. Whether these be wooden desks or pads of paper, assume that every use of computers leaves a trail too. Don't throw any direct action ideas around in public that you think might want to try at some point. Wait to propose an idea until you can gather a group of individuals that you expect will be interested in trying it. The exception is the bosom companion with whom you brainstorm and hash out details in advance. Safely outside your home and away from mixed company, of course. Don't propose your idea until you think the time is right for it to be tried. Invite only those you're pretty certain will want to join in. Everyone you invite who doesn't end up participating is a needless security risk. And this can be doubly problematic if it turns out they feel your proposed activity is laughably dumb or morally wrong. Only invite people who can keep secrets. This is critical whether or not they decide to participate. Stream idea. Post a link to where you're reading when you start reading it to your chat. Ah, it's a good idea. So, this is what I am currently reading, for those interested. Fresco's full of good ideas. Well, I mean, you keep bringing up good points consistently throughout this entire stream, Fresco. Honestly, you're practically a co-host at this point. Heart. Yeah. I keep going like back and forth on whether or not I should be like in a voice channel so people can just hop in and like comment on this stuff as well. Like whether or not I should hop in like the leftist content creator voice chat or something. I don't know. It might be a good idea. Source retrieved on September 20th, 2019 from https crimethink.com 2004. What is security culture? Hashtag FN2. The URL suggests that this is from 2004. So also with the 9/11 and immediate. Well, what I posted is not safe as death, which was this, but the security culture. So yeah. That's the one with that source. Oh, okay. It's from 2004. Got it. It's at the beginning of the doc. Okay. That's good to know. So, I guess we'll continue with that knowledge in mind. Develop a private shorthand for communicating with your comrades in public. It's important to work out a way to communicate surreptitiously with your trusted friends about security issues and confront levels while in public situations, such as a meeting call to discuss possible direct action. Knowing how to gauge each other's feelings without others being able to tell you are sending messages back and forth will save you the headache of trying to guess each other's thoughts about a situation or individual, and help you avoid acting strangely when you can't take your friend aside in the middle of things and compare notes. By the time you have convened a larger group to propose an action plan, you and your friends should be clear on what each other's intentions, willingness to run risks, level of commitment, and opinions of others are, to save time and avoid unnecessary ambiguity. If you haven't been a part of direct action planning circle before, you'll be surprised how complicated and convoluted things can get, even when everyone does arrive prepared. Convened. Long E in the middle equals gathered. So convened. or like it's like gathered. So conve. Uh, I don't think I'm going to pronounce that correctly. Convended. Okay, thank you. Convended. It's a lot of words I can't pronounce today or read. Not e. Convened. Oh, convened. Convened. That's such a weird word to say. Yes. Okay. Well, the ending is a bit off. Yeah. Develop methods to establish the security level of a group or situation. One quick procedure you can run at the beginning of the larger meeting at which not everyone is acquainted with is the vouched for game. As each person introduces themselves, all who can vouch for them raise their hands. Only vouch for those you are confident are worthy of your trust. Hopefully, each person is connected to others by some link in the chain. Either way, at least everybody will know how things stand. An activist who understands the importance of good security will not feel insulted at such a situation if there is no one present who can vouch for them and others ask them to leave. You don't want a place that can be monitored. No private residences. You don't want a place where you can be observed altogether, not to park across from the site of the next day's actions. You don't want a place where you can be seen entering or leaving, or that someone could enter unexpectedly. Post scouts. Lock door once things get started. Watch out for anything suspicious. Small groups can take walks and chat. Larger groups can meet in quiet outdoor settings, go hiking or camping if there's time, or in private rooms and public buildings such as libraries, study rooms, and classrooms. Oh, back to English is hard. Best case scenario, though, they have no idea you're involved in direction. You're close with the old guy who runs the cafe across town, and he doesn't mind letting you have the back room one afternoon for a private party, no questions asked. Yeah, it like I've definitely heard about the go hiking, go camping, go for walks. You kind of want to avoid private rooms if necessary because they can be easily tapped and things of that sort. I have nothing but respect for anyone who is learning English as a second language. I only know who is learning English as wait. I only know English and I've been living around it and speaking it for like 30 plus years and I'm still shit at it. Yeah, exactly. Um, Same thing with me, but get that to like 25 years and uh, we're about there. um, yeah, and learning other languages can also change the way you think about things as well. So I highly encourage people to learn other languages if you have the time and if you want to. So be aware of the reliability of those around you, especially with those with whom you might collaborate in underground activities. Be conscious of how long you've known people, how far back their involvement in your community and their lives outside can be traced, and what others' experiences with them have been. The friends you grew up with, if you still have any of them in your life. God damn, that is a mood. May be the best companions for direct action, as you are familiar with the strengths and weaknesses and the ways they handle pressure, and you know for a fact they are who they say they are. Make sure only to trust your safety and the safety of your projects to level-headed folks who share the same priorities and commitments and have nothing to prove. In the long term, strive to build up a community of people with long-standing friendships and experiences acting together with ties to other such communities. I mean, native English speakers generally don't put as much of an effort into learning the details of the language since they already know it. I definitely feel this with Swedish too currently. While people learning it as a non-native language needs to put more effort into understanding the grammatical constructs of the language. Yeah, yeah, that's completely fair. In this turn, again, uh, IME leads non-natives to often have a better language understanding than average native speaker. Oh, in my experience. Okay, I knew about IMO, which is in my opinion. So, in my experience. Thank you. There's so many damn acronyms out there. Jeez. That's another thing. Not only do you have to learn the language, but you have to learn the language in the language. Like acronyms and conjugates and all that jazz as well. Yep. Euphemisms and sayings. And some sayings don't even translate all that well. Scroll down there. Ooh, ooh. So don't get too distracted worrying about whether people are infiltrators or not. If your security measures are effective, it shouldn't even matter. Hardest for me is obscure cultural references. You know what? Anytime someone says a celebrity name, it usually goes right over my head because I don't give a damn about celebrities. Like, I'm reasonably comfortable with mainstream cultural references. Yeah, like if it's like parts of like media and art, I can usually get it sometimes. But for things like children's shows that were only aired in the UK or US and never made it to say Danish TV, I just have no idea. Yeah, that's completely fair. Heck, I didn't know about Moonman until I found Twitter. So now I know that Moonman exists as a show because I won't consume that later in life, so I don't catch up on that. Moonman is something I grew up with. Yeah, exactly. But I wasn't exposed to that until Danish people on Twitter are like, yo, how have y'all not heard of this? Yeah. So don't waste your energy and make yourself temporarily embarrassed. Chad has followed. Thanks for the follow. I really appreciate it. Oh, that's a heck of a name. So don't waste your energy and make yourself paranoid and unsociable, suspecting everybody you know. Everybody you meet. If you keep all sensitive information inside the circle of people it concerns, only collaborate with reliable and experienced friends whose history you can verify and never give away anything about your private activities, agents and police informers will be powerless to gather evidence to use against you. A good security culture should make it practically irrelevant whether these vermin are active in your community or not. The important thing is not whether or not the person involved with the cops, but whether or not they constitute a security risk. If they are deemed insecure, double meaning intended, they should never have been permitted to end up in a situation in which anyone's safety depends on them. The movements were created by Finland Swede, not related to Denmark per se, but Finno-Swede. This is such an important point too. Some people go all in on their paranoia. Yeah, and then they start internal conspiracies on themselves, and they're not able to trust anyone ever. So they distrust everyone instead of relying on the built-in security of the system. Yeah. Learn and abide by the security expectations of each person you interact with and respect differences in style. To collaborate with others, you have to make sure they feel at home with you, even if you're not collaborating with them. You don't want to make them uncomfortable or disregard a danger they understand better than you. When it comes to planning direct action, not abiding by the security culture accepted in a given community can wreck not only your chances to cooperate with others on a project, but possibly the project happening at all. For example, if you bring up an idea others were planning to try in a setting they deem insecure, they may be forced to abandon the plan as it may now be associated with them. Ask people to outline for you their specific security needs before you even broach the subject of direct action. Let others know exactly what your needs are when it comes to security. The corollary of abiding by others' expectations is that you must make it easy for others to abide by yours. At the beginning of any relationship in which your private political life may become an issue, emphasize that there are details of your activities that you need to keep to yourself. This can save you a lot of drama in situations that are already stressful enough. The last thing you need on returning from a secret mission gone awry is to end up in a fight with your lover. But if you trusted me, you would tell me about this. How do I know you're not out there sleeping with? It's not a matter of. This feels like a personal thing that happened to someone. Sensitive information isn't a reward to be earned or deserved. This paragraph feels like it was written via personal experience. It is something that's happened. Yeah. So look out for other people. Make explicit to those around you what risk you may pose to them with your presence or with actions you have planned, at least as much as you're able to without violating other precepts of security culture. And we also know that intelligence agencies have planted lovers into activists' lives, even to the point of them getting married. so it's not completely unfounded. Yeah, like, those cops who were married to people for, like, over 5 years and had kids. And then it's like, oh yeah, I'm a cop and you're under arrest, and what? What? Just what? It's pretty fucking abhorrent. Yeah. Effing. Ficking. That. Either one works. A-cab. Yes, A-cab. Big ol' A-cab. And why can't I type now? My brain. Big old A-cab in the chat. Look out for other people. Make explicit to those... Oh, yeah. So I read that sentence. So, the thing that pops into my head is, like, the very silly, or, like, the Batman thing of, I can't let you in my life. I do things that are dangerous, and I don't want you involved in that danger. And the Batman's employing security culture. It's a shame that Batman's a billionaire class trader, but you know, onwards, let them know the extent you're able, what risk you run yourself. For example, whether you can afford to be arrested, if there is some outstanding warrants on you, if you're an undocumented migrant, etc. What responsibilities you have to keep up with, whether or not you have allergies. Don't imperil others with your decisions, especially if you're not able to provide concrete support should they somehow get arrested and charged on the account of your behavior. If someone else drops a banner in an area immediately adjacent to a fire you set, the police might charge them with arson, even if the charges can't stick. You don't want to risk their ill will or accidentally block their planned escape route. If you help initiate a breakaway march that leaves the permitted zone, try to make sure you keep your body between the police and others who have come along, but don't necessarily understand the risks involved. If you and others have come along but don't necessarily understand the risks involved, if you escalate spontaneous parade by engaging in property destruction, make sure others who were unprepared for this are not still standing around in confusion when the police show up. The problem is more that Batman isn't a class traitor. I mean, Batman's a billionaire, and he beats up thugs on the street for petty crimes of them just wanting to have enough money to live. He's a vigilante of sorts. Exactly. So he's not betraying his own class. Ah, okay. Okay, yeah. I get it. I get it. It's because he's not betraying the elite class. Yeah. It takes a moment sometimes. This is why reading something, pausing to think about it instead of just jumping to an immediate thing is important. Bourgeoisie class traders equals good? No. Wait, yes. Exactly. I almost did the thing where I read the thing and was like, what? But no, take a moment, read, and like, proletariat class traders equals bad. Yeah. Reading things in a group. Reading alone. I can get behind that. I can get behind that as I like have this up and I'm reading it with chat. If anyone in the chat wants to know what we're reading right now, I'm going to post it in the chat again so you can read along if you want, or skim ahead or whatnot. Also, not going to lie, I copy pasted bourgeoisie. I have trouble spelling that one. I usually attempt to spell it, and then get the little red line underneath it, and then I right click and get the correct spelling of it. Burger Rosie. Bourgeoisie. Yeah. Bourgeoisie. So, security culture is a form of etiquette, a way to avoid needless misunderstandings and potentially disastrous conflicts. Security concerns should never be an excuse for making others feel left out or inferior, though it can take some finesse to avoid that. Just as no one should feel they have the right to be in on anything others prefer to keep to themselves. Those who violate security culture of their communities should not be rebuked too harshly the first time. This isn't a question of being hip enough to activist decorum to join the in-group, but of establishing group expectations and gently helping people understand their importance. Besides, people are at least able to absorb constructive criticism when they're put on the defensive. Nevertheless, such people should always be told immediately how they're putting others at risk, and of what consequences will be should they continue to. Those who can't grasp this must be tactfully but effectively shut out of all sensitive situations. Security culture is not paranoia institutionalized, but a way to avoid unhealthy paranoia by minimizing risks ahead of time. It is counterproductive to spend more energy worrying about how much surveillance you are under than is useful for decreasing the danger it poses, just as it is deliberating to be constantly second guessing your precautions and doubting the authenticity of potential comrades. A good security culture should make everyone feel more relaxed and confident, not less. At the same time, it is equally unproductive to accuse those who adhere to security measures stricter than yours of being paranoid. Remember, our enemies are out to get us. Don't let suspicion be used against you. If your foes can't learn your secrets, they will settle for turning you against each other. Undercover agents can spread rumors or throw around accusations to create dissension, mistrust, and resentment inside or between groups. I need to watch Enemy of the State again soon. I don't think I've ever seen it. Uh, yeah, I need to get around to watching it for the first time. They may falsify letters or take similar steps to frame activists, The mainstream media can participate in this by reporting that there is an informant in the group when there is not one, or misrepresenting the politics or history of an individual or group in order to alienate potential allies, or emphasizing over and over that there is a conflict between two branches of a movement until they really do mistrust one another. Did I get through all of this? I don't think I got through the entirety. I'm going to just pick up from here. Again, a shrewd security culture that fosters an appropriately high level of trust and confidence should make such provocations nearly impossible on the personal level when it comes to the relations between proponents of the different tactics and organizations of different stripes. Remember the importance of solidarity in diversity of tactics, and trust that others do too, even if the media accounts suggest otherwise. Don't accept rumors or reports as fact. Go to the source for confirmation every time. Don't be diplomatic about it. Freaking fact check. Fact check. This. Sorry for derailing. No, I enjoy it when people derail me for fun things. I don't enjoy it when I get derailed by chuds. That's the distinction. Don't accept rumors or reports as facts. Yeah, exactly. Uh, Fact check that shit. Do I have a fact check command? I need to make a fact check command. Fact check is greater than vibe check. You're not wrong. You're not wrong. Don't be intimidated by bluffing. Police attention and surveillance is not necessarily an indication that they know anything specific about your plans or activities. Often it indicates that they do not and are trying to frighten you out of continuing with them. Develop an instinct with which to sense and when your cover has actually been blown and when your enemies are just trying to distress you into doing their work for them. Always be prepared for the possibility that you are under observation, but don't mistake attracting surveillance for being effective. Even if everything you are doing is perfectly legal, you may still receive attention and harassment from intelligence organizations if they feel you pose an inconvenience to their masters. And I highlight feel because the intelligence organizations are putting their feelings over facts. Sorry, I had to make the joke. In some regards, this can be for the best. The more they have to monitor, the more thinly spread their energies are, and the harder it is for them to pinpoint and neutralize subservience. At the same time, don't get caught up in the excitement of being under surveillance and begin to assume that the more authorities pay attention to you, the more dangerous to them you must be. They're not that smart. Okay. uh, don't don't start smelling your own farts if people are paying attention to you. Got it. They tend to be preoccupied with the resistance organizations whose approaches are most resemble their own. Take advantage of this. The best tactics are the ones that reach people, make points, and Exert language while not showing up on the radar of the powers that be, at least not until it's too late. Ideally, your activities should be well known to everyone except the authorities. Security culture involves a code of silence, but is not a code for voicelessness. The stories of our daring exploits and the struggle against capitalism must be told somehow, so everyone will know resistance is a real possibility put into action by real people. Open incitements to insurrection must be made, so would-be revolutionaries can find each other and the revolutionary sentiments buried in the hearts of the masses find their way to the surface. A good security culture should perceive as much secrecy as it's necessary for individuals to be safe in their underground activities, while still providing visibility for radical perspectives. Most of the security tradition and the activist milieu today is derived from the past 30 years of animal rights and earth liberation activities, such as it's perfectly suited for the needs of small groups carrying out isolated illegal activities, but it isn't always appropriate for more above ground campaigns aimed at encouraging generalized insubordination. In some cases, it can make sense to break the law openly in order to provoke the participation of large mass that can then provide safety in numbers. Balance the need to escape detection by your enemies against the need to be accessible to potential friends. In the long run, secrecy alone cannot protect us. Sooner or later, they're going to find all of us. And if no one else understands what we're doing and what we want, they'll be able to liquidate us with impunity. Only the power of an informed and sympathetic and hopefully similarly equipped public can help us then. There should always be entryways into communities in which direct action is practiced, so more and more people can join in. Those doing really serious stuff should keep it to themselves, of course. But every community should also have a person or two who vocally advocates and educates about direct action, and who can discreetly help trustworthy novices link up with others getting started. When you're planning an action, begin by establishing the security level appropriate to it, and act according from there on. Learning to gauge the risks posed by an activity or situation and how to deal with them appropriately is not just a crucial part of staying out of jail, it also helps to know what you're not worried about. So if you don't waste energy on unwarranted, cumbersome security measures, keep in mind that given action may have different aspects that demand different degrees of security. Make sure to keep these distinct. Here's an example of a possible rating system for security levels. 1. Only those who are directly involved in the action know of its existence. 2. Trusted support persons also know about the action, but everyone in the group decides together who these will be. 3. It is acceptable for the group to invite people to participate who might choose not to. That is, some outside the group may know about the action, but are still expected to keep it a secret. 4. The group does not set a strict list of who is invited. Participants are free to invite others, encourage them to do the same, while emphasizing that knowledge of the action is to be kept within the circles of those who can be trusted with secrets. 5. Rumors of the action can be spread far and wide through the community, but the identities of those at the center of the organizing are to be kept a secret. 6. The action is announced openly, but with at least some degree of discretion, so as not to tip off the sleeper of the authorities. 7. The action is totally announced and above ground in all ways. If y'all can give me a minute, I need to refill on my water, and my throat's getting a bit sore. So I will be right back for a group planning to firebomb an SUV dealership, while level 2 would be acceptable for those planning more minor acts of property destruction, such as spray painting. Level 3 or 4 would be appropriate for calling a spokes council preceding a black bloc at the large demonstration for a group planning to do a newspaper rat, depending on the ratio of risk versus the need for numbers. Level 5 would be perfect for a project such as initiating a surprise, unpermitted march. For example, everyone hears in advance that the Annie DeFranco performance is going to end in a spontaneous anti-war march, so people can prepare accordingly. But as no one knows whose idea it is, no one can be targeted as an organizer. Level 6 would be appropriate for announcing a critical mass bicycle ride. Flyers are wrapped around the handlebars of every civilian bicycle, but no announcements are sent to the papers, so the cops won't be there at the beginning while the mass is still vulnerable. Level 7 is appropriate for a permitted anti-war march or independent media video screening. Unless you're so dysfunctionally paranoid you even want to keep community outreach projects a secret. It also makes sense to choose the means of communication you will use according to the level of security demanded. Here's an example of different levels of communication security correspond to the system outlined above. No communication about the action except in person outside the homes of those involved in surveillance-free environments, e.g., the group does camping to discuss plans, no discussion of the action except when it is absolutely necessary. Outside group meetings, involved individuals are free to discuss the action in surveillance-free spaces. Discussions are permitted in homes, not definitely under surveillance. Communication by encrypted email or neutral phone or telephone lines is acceptable. People can speak about the action over telephones, emails, etc., provided they're careful not to give away certain details, who, what, when, where. Telephones, emails, etc. are all fair game. Email, listers, filtering in public spaces, announcements to newspapers, etc. may or may not be acceptable on a case-by-case basis. Communication and proclamation by every possible medium are encouraged. And that's the corresponding levels of communication to the corresponding actions. If you keep hazardous information out of circulation and you follow suitable security measures in every project you undertake, you will be well on your way to fulfilling early Crime Thought Inc. Ancient Abby Hoffman described as the first duty of a revolutionary, not getting caught. All the best in your adventures and misadventures. Remember, you didn't hear it from us.